It's an interesting time. We have a provincial election coming up.
Let's talk about the most important bill, Jamie.
Oh, Bill 44. This is Bill 44. And I guess just going back, Bill 44 is small-scale multi-unit zoning, and it's kind of David Eby's NDP party's attempt to create more housing supply. So the perks of the bill is increase housing supply. That's the intent. Efficiency and development reduces the need for rezoning hearings. Huge perk. I think everyone likes that. You don't those public hearings that where you get all the neighbors uproaring. I mean, that I look forward to those going away. I've been on both sides of those, and then they would give the province would give support to municipalities to implement the new zoning changes. The cons, it's getting pushback from some cities. Some cities are feeling like their control is being undermined. Infrastructure concerns for a lot of these cities, like how, single-family streets turning into 4 to 6 units. Do they have the sewer lines to accommodate that? Parking is less of an argument nowadays, so that argument's going out the door. There's some concerns for some neighborhoods about the character and the history of the neighborhood. But ultimately, there's wealthier cities like West Vancouver that have just straight-up pushback from it. They just don't want them. So I think it's an interesting time because we've been talking about the density increase, the small scale zoning, which is basically 4 to 6 units on your typical single family lot. And I think for me, it's exciting because it's the biggest change and biggest announcement in zoning that I've heard in my life. And right now, it's kind of apparent on the tactics and strategy of politics. And this is a big life lesson learned is, you have a real dramatic push from David Eby and the NDP party to force cities to update their zoning. And then certain cities push back and postpone, and then election shows up, and then other party might get in power and reverse some of this. So, I think it's a very interesting time, and I think it would be good for us to share our 2 cents on the good and bad of this small-scale multi-unit housing bill, and also just kind of the political party stance on it. So in short, single-family zoning, go to 4 to 6 units for cities over 5,000 population.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that, Denny? Does it feel right to you in all these? Let's just talk about Lower Mainland because that's really our focus.
Sure.
In every city in Lower Mainland, should all single-family zoning be 4 to 6 units?
No. I think density in our province, Greater Vancouver specific, is 25 years behind where it should be. I think there should have been a bigger thought, more city planning around increasing density 25 years ago. This is an effort to combat how poorly they were planned in the past, in my opinion. I think it would be quite bizarre to drive down a street in 10 years from now and go single family, 4-plex, single family, 6-plex, single family, 6-plex. I think it would look strange. It looks a bit out of sort and unplanned, essentially. So I like the idea of putting a little more thought into how the city's going to grow, where it's going to grow, like, a Brentwood, for example. Mm-hmm. Brentwood is a prime neighborhood that is going insane with development. There are tons of new towers, but outside of the towers is back to all single family. If there's some sort of small scale developments behind these towers for, let's say, a handful of blocks or whatever that may be, that makes sense to me in terms of city planning. Higher density around SkyTrain stations and big retail hubs. The city of Vancouver specifically, like I said, I think is just behind in the times and needs a lot more of this density, and it makes more sense there. But moving out to Abbotsford, Chilliwack, I don't really see how or why or what was the thought process behind blanketing this across the province. That's where I scratch my head a little bit of not much planning, but we need change, so let's just do this.
I think it's probably just a simple, broad message. Politically, it's hard to kind of have for NDP to come out and say, New West, you do this, Abbotsford, you do that. So it's a challenging thing that they try to do. I think the positive that came from it is it gave a big push to cities to make a decision whether they're on board with this change or not, and certain cities got on board with it. Burnaby updated their zoning. Vancouver updated their zoning. Victoria updated their zoning. West Vancouver pushed back. Coquitlam asked for an extension. New West is kind of pushing back. So certain cities push back.
Seems like New West is hiding in the shadows of everyone else.
certain cities push back, certain cities, and this blows my mind a little bit. Like there's a lot of holes in this. When you have 4 to 6 units on a single family lot, you would expect that zoning change to be like in a 1 FSR. So if you have a 6,000 square foot lot, you could build 6,000 square foot of interior space, and say you put 4 units on it, you could have 4 different owners. I read something where, because most of New West zoning allows a basement suite in an infill house, that's 3 units on a lot, it's exempt from having to adapt this 4 to 6 unit zoning. And I think what blows my mind is there's a big difference between the current zoning of a house with a basement suite and an infill that often in New West has like a 0.6 FSR versus that's owned under one person's title, versus 4 to 8 units that are owned by, or 4 units that are owned by different people under a 0.1 FSR. And when you do the math on it, you just get, with a 0.1 FSR owned by different people, you get 2,000 square foot layouts, 1,800 square foot layouts that are great for families. But the other version of it, you're really just getting a house with a basement suite and an infill house. And the basement suite and the infill is usually a small accommodation that isn't ideal for a family.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's a little bit of a tangent that certain areas are pushing back, or at least opting out, and they're getting away with it for that reason. So, but what I want to kind of focus on is just the the good and bad of the small scale unit. Like let's ignore transit oriented development areas for a bit, like busy streets. The transit oriented development bill 47, I think that is, that's going to create more high rises and mid rises. When I look at small scale multi-unit zoning, the 2 things that excited me: 1, it's an opportunity for the small time builder, and 2, it's more boutique developments, which I think can be amazing in the right place. 3, if I were to isolate New West, Burnaby, Coquitlam Center, and West, like a big blob of earth right in the middle of the city, is there enough townhouse zoning there? Do you see more townhouses coming up?
Not many.
Do you think the transit-oriented development areas are going to solve family housing? No. So the biggest thing that I like out about this is it's the most realistic zoning to start getting these 1,500 to 2,000 square foot family homes. And when I look at, say, Burnaby, New West, Coquitlam West, and Central, I'm thinking, okay, most of those areas should have that zoning, in my opinion. And most of those areas, the ones that no doubt should have it is busy streets, Canada Ways, Willingdons, Hastings, anything that's, Canada Way. If you're fronting onto Canada Way, you should be a townhouse. It shouldn't be a single family home. There's a bus stop that's right in front of your door, a block away. It's regularly going up and down. If you're on Austin or Como Lake, those streets should be lined with townhomes, not single family homes, in my opinion. But if you're, I don't know, say, what would be an example? Queen's Park, for example. There's some concerns about keeping the heritage intact. Say Harbour Shines in Coquitlam West, where you're one of those cul-de-sacs that's kind of dripping down to the Port Moody. I don't think if you're an outskirt cul-de-sac that's low density and large lots that you're a priority to turn into townhouses. Mm-hmm. And I think a better example of that would be North Vancouver, for example. You have all these streets that go up the hill that have low density cul-de-sacs. The neighborhood I live in Blue Ridge, is loaded with them. It would be weird to see at the top of the hill, at the top of the British properties, surrounded by estates and large lots, to have a 4 to 6 unit property go up. But I also think it would be incredibly beneficial to see those go up around Poirier, in Coquitlam, around the Poirier Sports Complex, around Canada Way, around these main veins, arterials. And I think municipalities have just failed at keeping their official community plan and zoning needs to accommodate the future needs of family housing. Mm-hmm. So I actually think my thought would be, I think you went a little too hard on the paint by saying it should apply to 100% of the areas. Just kind of blindly, it should probably apply to 80% in inner city suburbs, and 20% of that zoning, like the government roads or the, those estates that are at the foothills of Simon Fraser University, those should be single family, lower dense areas. It's okay to have some areas for the oligarchs, call it oligarch zoning. If you're the wealthy of the future, you go in the single family area, but the rest of North Burnaby, South Burnaby is going to be a mixed street where you're going to have 1990s single family homes next to a 2025 built fourplex. And, I quite frankly, I think that's okay. So, when I look at Burnaby and New West, inner city suburbs surrounded by other cities, I think most of that land, 80% of it, should be small scale multi-unit housing. When I look at, say, District of North Van, Coquitlam, probably half. I don't see Westwood Plateau up that hill. Well, mind you, I don't think they're tearing down many homes to redevelop them, but there's definitely outskirt areas where if you start putting 4 to 6 units at the very top of Blue Ridge, top of British Properties, top of Westwood Plateau, there could be a genuine infrastructure concern for the cost of getting the sewer upgraded in those outskirt areas. It just may be completely impractical. Versus you have this huge landmass in central Coquitlam that would be much easier to service, closer to the highway, closer to rapid transit. Probably should have more of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think anywhere around a park, busy street, schools, community centers should be loaded with townhouses. And cities zoning don't really, well, if you go back 2 years, 3 years, it didn't reflect that.
Yeah. I guess the reason we're bringing it up is because we have a provincial election coming up in a few weeks, and this is a big topic. And this is David Eby policy, which was popular with some and unpopular with others. And the Conservative Party is opposing it. So.
Well, kind of just on, we have the NDP, the Conservatives. Those are the two main parties that are going head to head. Conservative stance is they want municipalities to have control. They want to, their criticism on this is you're giving $61 million to municipalities to update their zoning. They want to give money based on output, not input. And I think they have some truth behind some of these arguments, but ultimately, I think the one thing that the Conservatives are ignoring in a little micro and where we sell real estate is there's been plenty, if you're paying attention and you look at the history of Burnaby zoning, New West zoning, Coquitlam zoning, there's archaic zoning that should be abolished everywhere. There's no reason to restrict, in my opinion, no reason to restrict a basement that's completely below grade in terms of floor space ratio. There's a lot of zoning that, if you looked at the zoning 2 years ago, that did not accommodate the density push that we're seeing today. So I think that cities did fail. I think the NDP's intent with this small-scale multi-unit housing is right. I think they went a little too hard in the paint. But if say it went to if the NDP got one more term, it might push some of these cities like Coquitlam, New West to update their zoning a little quicker. But if the Conservatives get in, I think they're just going to go right back to the means, and we're going to see more construction in Burnaby and less construction in New West in the next 5 years. And that's I think the real reality is, if you're a builder, where are you going to build in 2 years from now if Conservatives get in and city of New West and Coquitlam feel no pressure to update their density?
Yeah.
You're going to build in Burnaby.
Do you know why now that land, this is just an extra to why land value stuff is very slow. Interest rate costs are high, construction costs are high.
Builders are confused.
Confusion.
Builders
totally,
are confused.
Yeah.
Builders are I was going to build a single family home, but now I might be able to do more. And I'm already, they're already in the process. Driving up Canada Way to our office today, I saw 2 single family homes under construction that are now sitting on sites that you can do, 4 to 6 units. So, or maybe in some of these cases, even more. There's a lot of change. I don't know what to expect, Denny. If NDP gets in, I think we're going to see more of a push for this. If Conservatives get in, it might backtrack a little. But I don't think Burnaby's going to backtrack. Vancouver's not going to backtrack. It's just the other cities that are holding back are not going to push forward. Any closing comments on what are your thoughts on my 80-20 rule for small-scale units in inner-city suburbs? Do you think 80% of single-family homes should be 4 to 6 units, or do you think that number is way too high for a city like Burnaby?
I think 80 is probably high. It's probably more like 60-40.
Yeah.
But I guess back to my original comment is there just needs to be more thought around this stuff. And after thinking about Eby's blanket, there was no thought put into it, but I feel like they're trying to make up for lost time. Versus the municipalities, probably more than the province, will be a little more thoughtful with designing the city. And then it comes down to incentivizing the municipalities to push for this.
Not all municipalities want to grow.
Totally.
Some are completely have opposite incentives than growing too fast, right? Mm-hmm. So, I see why the province or why the NDP did a blanketed push, but a lot of flaws to it. It's a hard thing to do. trying to take the power away from the cities. Cities are still doing the building inspections, so you're not going to be able to do everything.
But then the negative here with how EB did it is now the municipalities just increase their development costs, so it's infeasible for a lot of developers to actually build these things. So they can fight
the unintended
back,
consequences, Daddy.
Totally.
The unintended consequences. Yeah, you're not wrong. But I do feel like the only thing that, for a tower, I think you gave me an example of development charges of a tower in Metrotown going from $2 million to $7 million. But for
No. A tower. So I know a developer is currently going through the process with the city of Burnaby right now. They're building a 70-story tower. Their development fees under the old process, $7 million, which they're in now under.
Okay.
If they were to build the exact same thing, he estimated their development cost to be about $50 million.
50. 7 to 50. Oh,
Yeah.
I was way off on my numbers. I said 2 to 7. Okay. Jeez, that's way worse.
Yeah.
Well, in all fairness, do we need more towers? Probably a few. It's not going to make housing more affordable, those development charges, but we definitely need more 15 to 2,000 square foot homes.
We 100,000% need more family style living homes, whether it's like 2 to 3 bedroom townhomes, walk up 2-level units that have 1,500 square feet. 100% we need more of those.
Yeah, City of Burnaby, if you're listening, let's not jack up those development charges on towers. They're struggling enough as it is. Let's keep them for small scale unit housing where you actually need the money for infrastructure. Anyway, I'm curious to see how it unfolds. Elections will tell all.